The NVIDIA GeForce GTX 780 in 2024. Have I gone mad? Or is this actually a viable card for 1080p gaming? Well, this is what we're gonna cover in today's video, so welcome back at Emoting PSUs. Now, this card I have here, well, this one specifically is an Asus Direct CO2 card. Basically, it came out in 2013, so this card has 11 years. Kind of crazy if you think about it, because honestly, it still looks kind of nice. This card I have here specifically, Asus was experimenting with a little bit of a different design. So as you can see, it has different fans, one more on the memory, which is supposed to give out a little bit more airflow, and one more for static pressure over the rest of the heatsink. Pretty unique if you ask me. It was also one of the few first cards to have a backplate, because back in the day cards did not have a backplate, so that I found kind of interesting. It did support SLI, so you could use two of these cards, and it had a 6 plus 8 pin connectors for power. Now the interface this card has is PCIe Gen 3 X16, but I think enough for the specs. Let's actually talk about why it might still be relevant. Well, first I want to talk about the issues actually, because this card has only 3 GB of VRAM. Now there are some versions out there, very few. In my whole life I've only had one on my hands, which actually have 6 GB of VRAM, which is kind of crazy because even the GTX 780 Ti was not made in the 6 GB version. So if you can find a 6 GB version, definitely buy it. And with this, I'm doing a little bit of a spoiler of the content of today's video. But basically, this card, out of the box, has a 3 GHz memory frequency and around 1 GHz core clock frequency. Now, the cool thing about it is you can overclock it and BIOS mod it very hard. First off, before we get into testing, how much does one of these cost? Well, anywhere the price you should pay from $30 to $50, in that price range, okay? Of course, used, you cannot buy them brand new anymore. And I do recommend, if you wanna buy one, buy a good model, like this Asus one, maybe an EVGA one. Do not buy cheap models, it's a bad idea. But to be honest, back in the day, the cards that still run today, they were all pretty good model, because there weren't as many cheap graphic cards back in the day. As you can see by the dimensions of those heat pipes, those cards had a lot of engineering going on into them. Now, if you buy one, what you need to do is do exactly as I have done and do a full repaste and cleanup of the card. So you want to disassemble it whole from bottom up and change the paste and even the thermal pads, but to be honest, you don't really have to change the thermal pads, okay? Now, once you've done that, and by the way, take a look at how nice this PCB looks. Crazy good in my opinion. Like, the amount of engineering, maybe I'm just, you know, a little bit of a geek for those things, but I think it looks amazing. Once you have your card repasted, cleaned up, and bought for, let's say, $40, is it actually worth it? Well, you will need a decent power supply, but actually not such an expensive PSU. In all of today's testing, we're using a 600 watt EVGA 80 plus white power supply. You can get away with a 500 watt PSU easily. So now the reason this card is actually maybe still usable is we can BIOS mod it and overclock it a lot and raise those clocks by a lot. But before we do that, let's actually take a bit of baseline of the performance we have here today, okay? So what I did is I'm testing 3 things. Firestrike, just to have a synthetic benchmarks comparison. So I ran it, and this card is not even breaking the 10,000 points mark, but it's still holding its own. It can run Firestrike pretty fine. Then I am running Apex Legends, and as you can see, just off the get-go at stock, it's already running pretty well. It does over 60 FPS. We actually measured an average of 80 FPS on Apex, which is pretty good if you ask me. Of course, with everything at minimum and using this Asus card, which is pretty good custom model. Now, I then tested Warzone, and here the problem began, because in Warzone, this card is not compatible with the drivers. So the problem is this card is in what's called EOL, end of life, and so it's not supported anymore by NVIDIA. So the drivers are not very good. When you open Warzone, it prompts you and tells you, hey, you shouldn't really be running this game on this card. But we finally managed to boot it, and it was doing on average 40 FPS, but the textures were a bit bugged, as you can see, a bit of green lines here and there. I'm not sure I would consider that playable at 40 FPS, but at least it was running, okay? So now is where the actual interesting part begins. So this card can not only be overclocked the good old way by raising the voltage and just pumping out those clocks. But you can actually use something that's called Pascal BIOS tweaker to BIOS mod the card. And what you do in the BIOS basically is you increase the voltage headroom, you increase the power limit, you stabilize the PCIe power limit, and you allow for more clocks to be pushed out. Now, this card has a hard limit of just a little bit over 1.25 volt on the V-core of the GPU, okay? So that we cannot really push because it's a driver issue. However, we can push the memory a lot. So the procedure is pretty simple. You need, again, Kepler BIOS tweaker, but first you need GPU-Z. Via GPU-Z, you save a dump of your own BIOS, so you have it in case you want to refresh it back. Then you open your BIOS in Kepler BIOS tweaker and you do all the changes. Again, what I did is power limit increase, voltage increase. I then took a baseline of my overclock I could achieve in Heaven benchmark with Afterburner, which in this case was plus 600 on the memory and plus 200 on the core clock, going to 3600 megahertz on the memory and 1.2 gigahertz on the core clock, and I baked it into the BIOS. So now we don't even need MSI Afterburner, and the card is actually running at 1.2 gigahertz, 3600 megahertz on the memory. And we then went ahead using a modded version of NV Flash and flashed it straight into the BIOS. You don't even need really a modded version because it's the same BIOS just modified, so it's plenty fine to be honest. And you just flash it and the card is now running perfectly fine, no Afterburner, fully clocked. But at this point, here comes the beauty. We have our new baseline clocks, but we have more voltage headroom, more power headroom. So what we do is we open up Afterburner again, we max out that voltage slider, max out the fan speed to cool it down properly, max out the power limit, and push it a bit more. And we managed to achieve, in the end, 1.3 gigahertz, relatively stable. Really stable was 1.25 on the core, whereas the memory really tops out at 3.6 gigahertz. But what's good after the BIOS mod is these clocks are flatlined, just like after the undervolt tutorials I show on the channel. So the clocks were not moving at all, giving out a very stable gaming experience. So we went ahead and on paper, we got roughly a 25 to 30% performance improvement. Now, will this translate into actual performance gains? Well, the answer is yes. So we went ahead and tested Apex Legends, and here we managed to get peaks of up to 150 FPS. As you can see, gameplay was super smooth, and on average we actually got 130 FPS. Again, most of the time hovering at around 140 FPS. Honestly, it was pretty much never dropping under 100 FPS, which is very good. It means you can play 1080p 144 Hz with a $30 GPU, which is crazy. We then went ahead and just, to try, I wasn't really expecting much. I opened up Warzone, and there, things really changed. Now, this is not really measurable by numbers, but basically, we reached 60 FPS, which is crazy. 60 FPS in Warzone with an 11-year-old GPU is actually crazy. But what's crazy is the gameplay was actually much, much smoother. Unfortunately, we still had those graphic artifacting green lines all over the screen, but I know that if you change up the drivers, specifically for Warzone, you can make it run properly, but then you will have issues in other games. So if you play a single game, you can do those mods and make it run properly, if it makes sense. So it's not too bad. So with all that said, let's move on to the conclusions, which basically write themselves alone. I say this card is still good in 2024, but you have to be prepared to open it up, repaste it, BIOS mod it, spend quite a long time testing. It took me, I think, 1 day full to really dial down the proper overclock and to get everything running properly. Again, the drivers give out a few issues and all the repaste and stuff, but kind of like the RX Vega 56 video, which we did, which, by the way, if you are interested about cheap GPUs being BIOS modded, go check that one out. That card costs double in this card, so around $70, but it performs close to double. Little spoiler. So the Vega 56 is another one very good card which can be BIOS modded. But this GTX 780, 100% recommended in my opinion for a very low-end gaming PC to play it at 1080p. Definitely recommended. Do let me know down in the comments if maybe you still have one of these, and if you have different GPUs which you might want me to take a look at and BIOS mod and do those things. I was thinking the next one might be a GTX 980, but you guys let me know. And hey, if you watched this far, check out the channel, maybe drop a like and subscribe if it's the first time you see me. I have much more content like this. We do build videos, GPU reviews. We have this Chinese motherboard which was in the test bench with the Ryzen 5 8500G covered. Again, you might want to take a look, and hopefully see you in the next one. Goodbye.